Hey, it's Mazzy here, and I need to talk about this label, Light in the Attic Records. I am sitting in my record library. This is the heart and soul of my record collection. Literally a pile of records on the floor. I want to concentrate in this video on Light in the Attic Records for a few reasons. I've owned about 50, 60 of their records over the last, what, decade maybe. They've been around since 2001, I believe. In 2002, I think one of their first reissues was The Last Poets. I think their debut album, I do not have a copy, who's considered sort of the godfathers of rap music, came out of Harlem in the late 60s. And I mean, very important artists there. But I'm a big fan of several record labels that really concentrate just on reissues. One of my favorite is Analog Africa, a label out of Germany that just concentrates on music from the African continents as well as South America. I order everything of theirs directly through Bandcamp, and I'm a huge fan. I've been doing a few things on Black Editions, a label out of Los Angeles. That's a little new to me. I know some of the artists, but that's more out there, avant-garde, free jazz, some weirdo shit. Some I like, some not for everyone, but some psychedelic crossover stuff, but amazing packaging, a diversity in the essence there. Obviously, there's Numero Group out of Chicago that does great packaging as well, and a great combination of, like, Midwest Ohio soul music and these great comps. And I really like some of the stuff that they do. But right now I want to concentrate on Light in the Attic for a number of reasons. They're one of the labels, like all four of these labels, that tell a story with music, tell a story with sound. Now, of course, I'm always pontificating about is the music stupid? And it is. But I love when a record is great music, sounds good, and the packaging sort of promotes that artist and promotes the style of music in there, and you learn something, whether it's with liner notes, the OBs at the beginning. I tell you, I've been sucked in buying records from Light in the Attic simply because of their OBs, that little introduction to an artist or an area, a collection I've never heard of. So I'm going to go through my collection. I will say that recently Light in the Attics reached out and sent me a small batch of records. So they're mixed in here. I'm not going to call out exactly what they sent me, just a few, but I've had about 50 to 60 of my own. And this is not everything, because there's a shitload of records here, but I want to showcase these records. Some are still in print, some are not. I don't know which are, are not. So reach out, go to their website. I'll put a link below to their website. I believe they're moving into a new distribution center. I got an email about that because I have been on their mailing list. So there's going to be a lull, I think, after December 9th if you order directly from them. So if you want any of these titles, go to the website, order them like right now. Otherwise, they're going to speed up their things coming in February. But you can get these things at outlets, independent stores. So seek some of these records out. I'm going to just give you a little overview of what I have. Now, I don't remember what my first Light in the Attic record was, but one of my favorites is the Serge Gainsbourg record, Historie de Melody Nelson. Now, if you're a Beck fan, as soon as you hear this record, you'll know where Sea Change came from. That fabulous record, the mood, the environment, the orchestration, the arrangements, the kind of swooning guitars. It's right out of here, lifted right out of here. I think he admits that when you read the liner notes or you read interviews with Beck where he got that. This is a beautiful orchestrated French pop record, jazzy, very cinematic, French cinema definitely type of thing, but obviously one of the most important artists out of France in the 1960s into the 70s was Serge Gainsbourg, and of course he produced and brought in a lot of the French pop singers of the 1960s, known as the Yee Yee movement, named after sort of the Yeah 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 from Beatlemania out of the UK there. So fantastic record. This is a one you definitely need to pick up. Another one right out of the French pop singer is the Jane Birkin record. Now, Jane Birkin was married to Serge Gainsbourg. I mean, obviously his beautiful cover shot of Jane, yet the model in the voice. I would say, as interesting it is, she's the least of my favorite in terms of her vocal stylings and her vocal capabilities, but it's still, to me, a must-have if you're into the whole yee pop scene. Amongst my very favorite of the French yee is this whole collection. I think I have them all, but Francoise Hardy. She made a series of records every year from, I think, 1965 to 69 and beyond. Just wonderful French pop. Some go in the folk country thing, some go in the pure pop thing. But every record of hers, I just adore. Originally Disc Vogue out of France. She never really, as far as I know, kind of made hits in this country, but I had heard of her over the years. But just a wonderful artist. You got to show the artwork here. The serene folk stylings of Francoise Hardy. What I love about LITA in the Attic is their attention to detail in terms of their packaging and the stories, as I said. Sometimes they have very simple books, overviews like this, little inserts that tell a story that are well curated, written about, so you really learn about these artists. Sometimes they're more involved booklets, which I'll show you as we go along. But I'd say also amongst my favorites, a lot of favorites here in terms of these releases. And I believe these two are out of print now, but I'm a big fan of the Louvin Brothers. Louvin Brothers, Brotherly Harmonies, Country Harmonies. Obviously, if you're a fan of rock and roll and country rock and Sweetheart of the Rodeo, you'll know, because on that record, Graham Parsons really brought the Louvin Brothers into rock and roll, into country rock on that album. This is a fantastic album. Satan is Real with that great iconic cover. I wish they could get this back in print. I believe it's out of print right now, but obviously all this has to do, and I'm not getting into that now, licensing issues, but this is such a great album. The brotherly harmonies of country music at its finest. Now this is fun too. Here are the Louvin Brothers again, and here's a collection, handpicked songs 1955 to 1962, obviously again on LITA in the Attic. And this is a comp of various artists who chose various songs by the Louvin Brothers and covered. This is a cover comp, like a tribute album. And you have Mark Lanigan, you have Graham Nash, you have Beck, obviously, Emmylou Harris, Will Oldham, Bonnie Prince, Lucinda Williams, Jim James, Chris Christopherson, Devanda Banhart, the great kind of the new freak folk singer, Chris Hillman, obviously from the Byrds, Zooey Deschanel, actress, singer, him and she and him. The Black Angels, I believe LITA in the Attic has put out some Black Angels album as well, Dolly Parton and M. Ward. This is a fantastic comp. You know, I think sometimes they have bundles, but unfortunately, I think these are both out of print. Maybe you can find one sneaky in one of your stores or on Bandcamp. But if you like country music and that sweet brotherly semi-gospel harmony thing, these are like essential records, beautiful records. One aspect I've really loved of LITA in the Attic are these records they put out that seemingly are everywhere and nowhere in the used bins. And there's an artist that, of course, you know, I grew up hearing about, but except for one song, I don't think I had ever heard his voice before. And of course, Lee Hazelwood. Now, Lee Hazelwood, if you don't know his name, he wrote These Boots Are Made for Walking, and he produced those great late 60s albums, mid to late 60s albums by Nancy Sinatra, and Some Velvet Morning and Jackson, I believe, right? That low voice, that just baritone, raspy voice with Nancy Sinatra was like just, you know, ice cream and whipped cream on top. Just that's not the way of putting it. So great. What a great collaboration. LITA in the Attic, I think, put a shitload of his records out. I only have 3 of them. I probably should have collected the whole series, but they kept going on and on and on. He had a label, LH, Lee Hazelwood International, I believe, that put out the Graham Parsons International Submarine record, which really did nothing, but it's an iconic record. amazing records. They're pop, they're folk, they're country. You realize the essence of what he did and what he really did bring in material to Nancy Sinatra in the 1960s. This is the LH1 years. So these are all, I believe, the records that they put out. I need to, I think, add these to my collection eventually somehow. But this was an OB, and it talks about the Legend of America songbook, rebellious pioneer who left a legacy trail of echo-laden pop masterpiece. He really did. He really had a vision. Was he ahead of his time in a way, of Americana, of this hybrid thing? This is an interesting album. Of course, that OB covers the bits and pieces on this cover, wild cover, right? This is the singles, nudes, and backside. So kind of a rarities from 1968 to 1971. Talk about the ultimate like record playboy of the late 1960s, early 70s. Left a legacy and an amazing series of records. Another record that I adore, that I did pick up, initially because of the cover, but this is a fantastic record too. He tried to do what he did with Nancy Sinatra with the great singer and dancer and actor Anne Margaret. This is the Cowboy, Lee Hazelwood, and the Lady Anne Margaret. And this is a fantastic record. Country pop, right in there with what Nancy was doing in a way. But, I mean, she's got the chops. She's got the voice. I mean, she's definitely a Broadway type theatrical artist, and this kind of went nowhere. I think the second record was planned. This is what's interesting. They put the time, the energy, the money into these elaborate things. I just know about photo curating and licensing and essays and copywriting, just to put all this stuff together and gather it together. They're definitely an archival label that, to me, succeeds big time in most of their issues. I want to show three more that really relate to Lee Hazelwood. These are Nancy Sinatra. Now, I know a lot of people out there will say, oh, God, I see those in the dollar bins and the $2 bins, and these are easy to get on Reprise Records. Of course, the daughter of Frank Sinatra is none other than Nancy Sinatra. Had a huge, huge string of hits. Now, this was the first. They have an ongoing sort of reissue series that they're doing for the Reprise albums of Nancy Sinatra. I do want to show this. I don't usually buy CDs like this anymore, but this was a small, like 45 size CD comp that came out that has this amazing, huge booklet. And this is worth it just for the book. And I would have bought the book alone in this case probably, because I just really like the diversity and the essays, the stories of Nancy Sinatra. I think she's getting her artistic due again. I think there's been a whole reevaluation, the collaboration she did, Something Stupid, which is probably one of the silliest things that Frank Sinatra ever sung, but I believe it's one of his biggest hits ever with Nancy Sinatra, saying something stupid like I love you. But this emulates this comp that came out. This is an initial overview. It's a 2-record set, and this has a smaller scale version of that book, but it's almost a 11 by 11 size book with artwork, and just really nicely done. So I tell you, they put the time and money in these books, and it reflects, they're not crazy, over the top, over expensive, archival audiophile recordings, but they sound really good. They're well pressed for the most part, and I think these are a fantastic series. And they're doing a great job curating this music for others. Obviously, they reissued these boots. Now, again, I'm sure you can find this. They expand to these gatefold editions. They expand with the archiving with these wonderful insert booklets. Really thick, really substantial booklets, not just like the 1-2 sheets that tells you how the records are pressed and cut. This is about the music and the artist, not about how they make the record. They have the great obi usually on the outside, so you really get a sense. And I think this is a great way of selling records. As I said, this is a great way of storytelling, to know what's inside the package, and it's something maybe to check out. In the 2000s, there was this movie that really kind of shook things up in the music business. It was A Search for Sugar Man, and it was a documentary about an unknown artist to most of us. Maybe you knew about it. I didn't know about him, and that's Rodriguez. Light in the Attic has put out several Rodriguez records, and it's again a fascinating story. So that's, aside from the music here, the parallel thing here is the stories of these records and the music and the journey. And I think it's something really interesting for you to dive into and get a sense of it. Watch that documentary. He was an artist that was in obscurity, living his life in America, and it turned out his records were huge. I believe somewhere in South America. Huge, huge. And they followed this journey, and they found him. The documentarians, I believe, found him. They brought his records back with Light in the Attic in this case, and he started touring and went back and played, and he's got a whole new life as a musician, living humbly on the East Coast, I believe, renovating houses, working on things, and now he's the artist that, with the support and the audience that maybe he should have had, years later. Different times, what would have been, what if, should have, could have. Fantastic records, a little bit of rock and roll, R&B, soulful, bluesy, and just great music. These are the two albums I have on Light in the Attic. Another artist that didn't get as much attention when she was out initially, not like now, is that of Betty Davis. Betty Davis, for a while, was married to Miles Davis, really kind of sold him, Souled. But these are the most sexy, soulful, funky. I mean, these are wild, right? These are blasters. You put these on and you crank it, and they're just really wonderful. Again, I believe these are still in print. They come in and out of print, need to be repressed. But these three Betty Davis albums, this might be my favorite. They Say I'm Different, Betty Davis. But these are a great series of records Light in the Attic put out of the soulful side. This next record is one that I had when it came out. And when I went through my 1995 purge, a third of my collection that didn't stay in the collection, not quite sure why. I had my reasons then. But this is the debut album by Bobby Whitlock. Now, if you don't know Bobby Whitlock by name, you know his voice, you know his songwriting, and you have records, my guess is, in your collection that he's on. He was on All Things Must Pass, George Harrison, Eric Clapton's. He was basically one of the Derek and the Dominoes, and he co-wrote songs on that Layla album with Eric Clapton. He sings on that album. He plays on the album. Guitar, his organ playing, his keyboard playing is phenomenal. It is a really good, soulful rock and roll album. I've done several videos on the gospel of rock and roll. What I mean by that is from like 68, 69 into 71, 72. There's like a 3-year golden period where Delaney and Bonnie, he played with Delaney and Bonnie and friends. So Delaney and Bonnie and Eric Clapton and Bobby Whitlock and George Harrison's My Sweet Lord and Joe Cocker. There's this kind of gospel-y sound of white artists, blue-eyed soul artists doing things. And he's definitely one of them right in there. Never really made it a lot on his own. He's had several solo records over the years. But again, I'm a big fan of this record. Yeah, it's just a really cool record, and it was reissued some years ago. I believe it's out of print, but maybe seek it out. And Bobby Whitlock, a great musician, one of those people you should know about, and most likely, again, you have something with him in your record collection. I've had this CD since it came out, Digable Planets. I never had the album. Of course, this is the heyday of a compact disc, and this is a fantastic hip-hop, pop, soulful, jazzy record by Digable Planets, reaching a new refutation of time and space. Catchy, danceable. Again, another great issue from Light in the Attic with an insert and some liner notes. This is brought out and expanded to 4 sides, 2 LPs, obviously because of the length of the CD. And then they recently, in the last year, I believe, put out their second album, one that I remember seeing and I just never picked up, and this is fantastic as well. And this is Blowout Comb, of course, talks about the comb that the African American hair comb. And my friend Larry Weinberg, I grew up with, had the Jufro too, and he had the exact same thing here. I don't think he knew it was called a blowout comb then, but Larry had the same thing. But again, another great release, A Diggable Planets. Both these, I think, are in print still. I don't know, but check them out, Light in the Attic. And this is called The Evil One, Rocky Erickson and the Aliens. And I think the one song I kept hearing was Creature with the Atom Brain. That got a lot of college radio airplay when it came out. But this is a fantastic comp. And a great companion to that Rocky Erickson solo comp is this. And this is called May the Circle Remain Unbroken, Rocky Erickson, a tribute to. Again, very much like that earlier Louvin Brothers thing I showed you. This is various artists covering the songs of Rocky Erickson. And we got Billy F. Gibbons, Moshart Sexton, Jeff Tweedy from Wilco, Lynn Castle and Mark Lanigan again, the Black Angels again, Nico Case, Margot Price, Gary Clark and Yves Monsies, Ty Segall, Lucinda Williams, Chelsea Wolfe, and Brogan Bentley. And it's got a great feel. You know, comps can go either way. I have countless comps on compact discs, not a lot of these kind of tribute things on vinyl, but if they're done right, when you're in the mood, if they kind of have a feel to them, they work really well. And I think this works well as that Louvin Brothers. Again, Louvin Brothers is my favorite of these, but it shouldn't be a competition. It's just giving you a little direction of my taste. I love me some Sunshine Pop, and I love this album, Free Design. I laugh because it's something that you wouldn't expect. Well, of course you would expect me to like it, because you know my change. I like great harmonies, great sounding records, just fun shit. And Free Design, Kites Are Fun Project Records was Enoch Light's label. Enoch Light did all those Bachelor Pad ping pong records in the late 50s, persuasive percussion, provocative percussion, basically to test out your newfangled cool stereo. I'm sure Don Draper had a few Enoch Light records to make sure your left, right, bongos, percussive things, kind of light jazzy, but fun records. This was kind of an audiophile label, I guess. We didn't call it that then. And these harmonies, Kites Are Fun is the song. Wop bop, jabop bop, almost like commercial, like overly produced commercial stuff, but beautiful. There's a lot of space in music, so it's not crunchy. That make any sense? Crunchy production, but it's really good. This is the only one I have. I should have got their whole catalog. I did not, but Kites Are Fun. They did a series of records. I believe Light in the Attic put 3 or 4 of their records out, and of course, it has a prerequisite book telling you the whole story. Interesting story here too. So that's where the curation of these and the archiving and storytelling is really important here. I just showed this in another video. I'll just show it again to remind you it's part of this collection. This is an expanded series of Terry Reid's The Other Side of the River, the album The River he did in 1973. Great kind of folky, bluesy, soulful record. He was the one that was asked to be the lead singer of Led Zeppelin by Jimmy Page, and he said, no, I'm not doing it. He was committed, I think, on a tour, another situation, and he recommended Robert Plant to Led Zeppelin. Now, this record wasn't totally successful on Atlantic Records. He did early records by Mickey Most on Epic Records, and then later I remember when I worked for ABC, he had a record, I think in 1976, Seeds of Life, I believe it's called. But this was an expanded series which has I think all the songs from this session for The River, and it's worth checking out definitely. Another record which is kind of cool is Peter Walker. I've had this for a while too. Again, this is another one that I had an original of years ago. It was on Vanguard. Vanguard, you know, was a great folk label out of the East Coast, and Peter Walker was this amazing guitar player that had sort of a primitive guitar, but more of a raga rock, Eastern style, little freeform, little jazzy, but definitely folk inspired. Gypsy stylings. Again, lovely package. You know, I tell you, they use these great thick cardboard inserts. This has an expanded book that is really great. And the curation of, you know, read these stories instead of just, you know, pulling shit off of Wikipedia. This is the stuff where you need to read about these artists, where you have the deep dive in an artist. And this is something that I think the story is as important as the music. And I don't only have one. I think Light in the Attic issued 2 or 3 of his records, maybe more, and that's Jim Sullivan. And this cover alone, this photograph alone, in a way represents what the story is with this music. He was an LA writer, an LA singer, songwriter. He was in LA and he was decided to get up and move and drive to Nashville. He was going to bring his family out there. He was going to go ahead of time. And he drove his car on the way and he was never seen again. I think they found his car off a highway. And so when you think about what this represents, as if he walked into the ether, he walked into the ocean, he walked into the ends of the earth. Was he kidnapped by aliens? It's a kind of folky style singer, songwriter, soft rockish from 1969, I believe this was recorded. And it's really an interesting thing. I haven't heard the other 2 or 3 records that Light in the Attic has released, but the story itself is sort of unbelievable, and it adds to the mystery of this music. Another great record with a great story, and this is a record by Leo Nascentelli. Now, if you don't know his name, you may know his music. He was a guitar player for the Meters out of New Orleans, fabulous Meters that hooked up with Alan Toussaint and worked on a lot of records, had a great series of records on their own. Great kind of funky, soulful guitar player with a New Orleans bent. Well, he worked on a record in the early 1970s, around 1971, I believe. This is the time of the singer-songwriter of Carole King, of James Taylor, of Elton John. And he made this tape, and the tapes were put away, never to be found. He gets signed up, he gets pulled in to play with the Meters, and the rest is history. They did all these great albums, and he's still playing. A success story in so many ways. Well, 1995, when Katrina hit, believe these tapes were at Alan Toussaint's studio and they disappeared. They got washed away. Cut to a few years ago, number of years ago, a guy buys a storage locker. You know those shows, Storage Wars? I don't know if it's like that. He buys the contents of a storage locker and there's a tape in it. Anyway, cut to the chase. You got to read the story on your own. This recording was found and they researched who it was because I think it had the label of the studio on it. And he went back to Leo and he thought this recording was lost forever. And of course, Light in the Attic just put this out. Another Side, it just came out in the last year or so. I highly recommend it. I think it's really interesting. It's intimate, but it's a really kind of a good, somewhat of a soulful folk record. This is one of the greatest archival releases, I think, in this collection here in terms of the way it's packaged. Well, one of 2, I think. Way it's packaged, the music itself, the curation, and of course the essays included in the book. And this is Karen Dalton, In My Own Time. I believe this originally came out on Capitol Records in early 1970, 71, I believe. And it really did nothing. Now, she was out of the whole folk scene, Greenwich Village, of Dylan, and a friend of Fred Neil's, a great folk singer-writer who wrote The Dolphins, wrote Everybody's Talkin', that of course would be a big hit from Harry Nilsson, a theme from Midnight Cowboy. She was had her personal issues, drug-related, whole skew of things, which I won't get into here. But this is an expanded edition that is kind of a stunning release. It's got a booklet with a whole essay by Lenny Kaye. Lenny Kaye, of course, guitar player, and Lenny Kaye, who did Nuggets way back in the day, works with Patti Smith, plays with Patti Smith. Also has an interview discussion on Karen Dalton by Nick Cave. And a lot of singer-songwriters have been influenced by her, from Courtney Barnett, obviously, Nick Cave, and many, many others. The original recordings of this were produced by Harvey Brooks, great bass player on the East Coast scene. I remember one of my favorite sounds of him playing bass is on the album Super Session with Al Cooper and Stephen Stills and Mike Bloomfield. How cool is that? And this particular package has 2 45s included as well. So with flip back sleeves, you know, it's really well done. Really great packaging again, and a great archival release from Light in the Attic. Now, this is a strange one. This is really interesting. I found this fascinating. This just came out earlier this year, and this is Earl's Closet, Earl McGrath. Earl McGrath. Who the hell is Earl McGrath? He had a subsidy. He's kind of like an A&R man, producer, curator, bon vivant of Hollywood in the 1970s. And this is a collection, The Lost Archive of Earl McGrath, 1970 to 1980. Was he a playboy? I don't know. He worked with a lot of artists. He had a sub-label, Clean Records, that Atlantic distributed. And he curated some really interesting music. Now, this is the comp that has Delbert and Glenn, Hall and Oates, Terry Allen, kazoo singers, Michael McCarty, Jim Hurt, Daryl Hall and John Oates again, Terry Allen, Ultraviolet, Johnny Angel, Paul Potash, David Johansen. This is one I've just started getting into and haven't read the entire booklet yet, but I find these kind of characters very fascinating, kind of an unknown name in the record business. So I think this is really, really interesting. Party animal, hung out with the elites of rock and roll. Earl McGrath. Kind of an interesting record for Light in the Attic to put out, I guess. But I'm looking forward to check this out even more. So this is one that they did send me, along with the Karen Dalton record. What a beautiful cover this is. Leslie Weiner. This is from an album, an expanded edition from 1990 that just came out in the last year and a half as well. And the album is called When I Hit You, You'll Feel It, which is kind of appropriate for this. What a beautiful, beautiful portrait right there, collage. This is tape loops. This is ambient. This is dub. This is a little esoteric with a minimalism thing. She was a model. She was an artist, musician, performance artist. And I had never heard of her or this album. This was also sent to me with this batch. And this is kind of a cool, gorgeous album. This record, I assume, is like her performances, where it's like a collage of music. There's a lot of different layers of genres mixing in, again, with the ambient, with the hip hop. And I presume a lot of this music was used within her multi-image and multimedia video pieces and galleries and museums and performance art. But this is a really cool record, and I'm just getting into this. I played it twice now, and I'm looking forward to get a deeper dive into these musings and this music of Leslie Weiner, W-I-N-E-R, on Light in the Attic. There's so many records I have in Light in the Attic, so I'm not showing everything. I just wanted to give you a really good, precise, somewhat precise overview of the vastness of this catalog and artists. And I already did a deeper dive into this record, but I want to just remind you, I'm going to end with this. And this is the Lou Reed album. This is Words and Music, May 1965. This is sort of a volume 1 of the Lou Reed archive. This is the expanded edition, which has some extra tracks. Now, what this is, what a beautiful cover art, and obviously a really well curated and written booklet as well. This is basically a poor man's copyright. In 1965, he recorded a home tape with John Cale, sent it from his parents' house in Long Island, and got it back and kept it sealed. And after his death in his office, they found this tape. And Light in the Attic is doing a series of things in cooperation with the estate and Laurie Anderson of Lou Reed unreleased music. And it's going to be really interesting to see what they come up with. This is a home recording, but it has early songs from 1965 that he would later go on to do with, obviously, with Velvet Underground, like Heroin and Waiting for My Man. Just a fantastic production on this in book. Again, this is the expanded edition. You can get a single version as well, and with this great design, die-cut covers telling the whole story of this tape and the early history of Lou Reed. A tape that was sealed for over 50 years, Lou Reed. So thanks for watching. This is Light in the Attic, a record label out of Seattle that has a lot of reissues, has some original content. Check out what else they have I mean, they're vast, and it's really interesting the care they put into, again, the production of these records, the artwork, the essays, the music itself, obviously. So thanks for watching. Thanks, Light in the Attic, for that handful of records you sent me. But I've been a fan and a collector of some of these records for many years now. So, you know, hometown record company, kind of nice to showcase in this case. Mazzy loves you.